All right. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Hope it's good. Welcome to today's insight session. My name's Adam Kurtz, and I will be delivering this session to you today. And we'll talk about creating sales plans and budgets in Stratum. And there's different ways you can do that. So we're going to talk about some alternatives that you could pursue to get your sales plans and budgets or forecasts, whatever you want to call it, into Stratum so you can analyze that data along with your actuals to see if you're meeting your forecast or your budgets, which is pretty important. So we'll talk about different ways of getting that type of data into Stratum. Of course, you have the traditional ways of getting data into Stratum, via ETL backend processing, but now you can actually import this data through the front end. So we're going to look at that. What is using the data import feature? What does it take to set that up? Um, if that stuff is in Excel, what types of formats do we accept? Um, we'll talk about that process. How do we do the actual data import process using the interface? But there's other ways, right? So you have that way, right? Using the import process, Excel. You can also, as part of the analyst hub, you can use data copy, which is a utility within the analyst hub that allows you to copy data that you already have within Stratum, like perhaps your sales or a demand category, whatever it is, you can use that as your source to populate your categories of your budgets, your plans, or your forecasts. So there's ways you could leverage your sales history as well if you want to. Okay. And then we'll look at planning. There's also a feature within the Analyst Hub that allows you to actually change the data within the interface. So we'll take a look at that too. And then any questions you might have afterwards, feel free to use the chat feature and we will try and answer your questions. So you see this all the time, right? The Stratum Data Hub. Today we'll be focusing on the Analyst Hub, which is basically the piece where you're getting data into Stratum through the interface. We know we can get data in through traditional methods that we've been doing all along, right? But we'll be concentrating today mostly on the utilities within the Analyst Hub so we can talk about how to get that data into the Stratum application using spreadsheet import or using data copy, whatever we want to use. And then how does this work? And then how do we change the numbers if we need to? So first things first, let's look at the interface and let's see how we can get the data in to Stratum using the data import feature. Now, when I use the data import feature, I will need to have data available to me within Excel. So here I have an Excel spreadsheet with my sales plan in it, right? Pretty simple. Um, it's got the region. You got descriptions in there. You don't necessarily need the descriptions, but you could have them. Sold to, product brand, product. I've also got the plan amounts going across in a horizontal fashion for 12 months. So this could be for a year, whatever year you're planning for, right? I got some other, utilities over or other columns like we'll end up ignoring, like the grand total. I've got a multiplicative factor, so if I want to use that to factor, any of these with a multiplicative factor, I can do that too, just to kind of update the numbers. As I go through here, I might want to manually update numbers as needed. That might be a process that your team goes through to make sure that these numbers are what you want them to be. And that all happens within Excel. When you're ready to upload this to Excel, um you can use the upload button right here directly using the now this would require the access hub and you don't necessarily need it, right, to have these buttons here. Let's say you got this data, you downloaded it manually from Stratum, and now you're ready to upload it using the Analyst Hub. You don't need the Access Hub per se, right? You can do all this without the Access Hub. The so once your forecast is ready to import, then you're ready to you can then kick off the import process within the actual interface. So here I am within Stratum. Hopefully this looks familiar. I can then go to my menu in the upper right hand corner, and I can go into Analyst Tools, and that's where I'll find these utilities to help me create my plan. So if we look at the data import, let's go ahead and select that. And it'll show you a menu of the import jobs that you've already run before. And here they are. So here's where I can actually submit a new job. I will then click on the new button, and I will browse for the um, sales plan file that I'm looking for. And I'll select the sales plan Excel spreadsheet that we just looked at, and I will click on open. You might want to close it beforehand, right? And then that will allow us then to go ahead and open that file now. So once we have the file updated and closed, we can then have the interface then upload the file into the designer, and then we will um, start the mapping process. So it's uploading my preview of the data into my designer. And this is slow, by the way, just so you know. It's probably my internet connection. Nevertheless, so you'll get this menu when it appears, and this is basically asking about the file. You know, it's saying, what do you want to do, right? Basically, so do you want to add this data, or are you replacing something you've already put in before? So you do have that option so that, you know, so let's say, for instance, you've already done this and you've maybe there are some additional changes you wanted to make. Well, you can go ahead and get back in that file and make those changes and then do a replace so that you can replace the data that you've already added in there. Then you'll need to tell it where to put the data. So you'll have to select a target category. And these will only show up if they are um, deemed as such, so that you'll have and basically a setup or an admin process. Not a lot, but you'll need to set up some categories that will strictly be for this type of process, right? And those categories, once you set those up, those are the only ones that will show up here. And that's a good thing, right? We don't want people importing data into other categories of data like sales. That would be bad. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and select my sales plan because that's the category I'm going to use. Right. So that part is simple. And then my next selection would be, you know, it's asking me what type of formatted file did I use. And if you remember the file, I was using the sales plan. It was going across in horizontal fashion. That's what we call a time series file. But you can also have a file, maybe for instance, that is not going across with the 12 months. Maybe you have the months going down in a vertical fashion, and that's called transactions. So we do support both. It all depends on how you get the data, what you feel comfortable with working with the data. Maybe you're getting a forecast from another system and it provides the data in a transaction based format as opposed to time series. So you do have that option. And now it's going to ask how many headers I have in that file. I know that I have three, and then there's the it'll also ask me for the where that transaction date is for that file. And wow, that's really, let me refresh this and see. It seems like this thing's, there we go. There we go. It seems to be behaving a little bit better. There we go. So I know I have three header rows, and then it'll ask you what header row has the dates in it. So if we were to look at the file, I don't want to open it again, but that's where my dates were for my columns of data for all each month going across in that time series horizontal fashion. And then you'll just need to match it up with the dates and what they look like down in the examples below. Once you answer these questions here, they can go ahead and click OK, and it will then import the a preview of the data from that file, and then we can start our mappings. So here, I'm going to go ahead and collapse the left frame menu. And I've done this before. So the product knows, it already remembers how to map the file. If you've already perhaps have imported the data before, it will remember the columns. But if it doesn't, you can go ahead and tell it, if that column is a dimension, a measure, or to ignore that column. And we know that these are dimensional columns here. My region is a dimension. You can then tell it what dimension it is for that column if it's not already mapped. So you'll go through your mappings. I'm ignoring the descriptions, and I'm mapping in the dimensional keys that I'm getting from the file. Going further to the right, we can see that the data itself is mapped to the measure of plan amount. And again, you'll go in and make those necessary selections as needed. So this might be unit based. Mine happens to be dollar based. So it depends on what you want to do there. And that looks good. The whole thing is mapped out, and then we can see the grand total is being ignored along with my other columns that I had in that file that are being ignored. All right. And then I can go ahead and validate the file if I wanted to. Click on the validate button. It'll then go in and make sure that your data looks good and is ready to go. And then you would go ahead and process that, and it would then submit the data for processing. You would then get an email, and then you can go in, and once the data has been processed, you can then go in and look at your data. I will then run a view called sales plan. And we can see what the data looks like. Wow, I do apologize. I guess my internet is really slow today. Let's see if I can reboot my VPN. All right, that seems to have done it. Yeah, a lot better. So here we can see that, well, I'm getting an error there. Oh, well, that's why. Let's fix the invalid time range here. And we'll get that monthly data in there. Yeah, so there's my plan. All right, so at product brand level. So this is basically the data that we just imported in. We see that I've got my plan amount, um, and that's the data that we just imported in. And that's it really. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got your data, you got my plan amount that I just imported from my spreadsheet. I can drill in on that plan amount data. Farm Fresh is one of my bigger brands. And we can see how the numbers are related to my different products, all from that Excel spreadsheet. and we can drill to the different levels because I had those levels within my Excel spreadsheet. I don't believe we had salesperson in there though. So if I drill to that level, yeah, the data goes away. So that makes sense. So if you wanted sales rep, obviously you would need to have that as part of the Excel file. But that's cool, right? I mean, you can have that data, you have it within your file, you can upload it using the analyst hub data import feature, and then now you've got that data available for analysis purposes. Now, when I use this approach and I strictly just upload it to this particular category, I can't change these numbers. That's it. So if I wanted to change anything, I would need to go back into that file, make the necessary changes, and then replace the data that I put in there. Um, so that's something that, yeah, that's something that you would need to do if you were to take this approach. Um, Another thing that you could do is you could populate this plan by using the data copy feature. So instead of using data import, you could go back to your analyst hub, analyst tools, and we also have this data copy utility. If I click on a new data copy job, I need to fill out the necessary menus in order to kick off this data copy feature. Now with data copy, we're actually going to copy the data from an existing measure that may have data that we want to use for our sales plan. So here we would then go into our data mapping, all the necessary tabs here to select where the data is going to come from for my sales plan. We'll just put this into our budget. We'll call it a budget. And then I would select what measures that I want to copy over. So if I wanted to put in a budget working amount, then I can copy that from my sales amount, and then I could, if I want to bump it up by 20%, then I could put in a multiplicative factor of 1.2. And I could change my operator, but I do want to use the asterisk for I could divide, I can subtract and add. In this case, I'm using the multiplicative factor, so that I want to bump it up by 20% or whatever factor you want to use there. If I wanted to add in another measure, maybe do sales units as well, then I can select my sales units and put that into my units working. And I can indeed bump that up as well. Or not. Maybe I want to just make a pricing increase. So, it's up to you how you want to finagle that factor. And then the time mapping. So you'll need to tell it where, how much history or what history you want to grab it from. And it's year to year. So you want to do 1 year at a time. So in this case, if I wanted to copy all of 23 and all the way through December for 2023, and then copy that and make sure time units are the same. And then that'll go into my 24 category as such. So the mapping will be year to year and month to month, a full, 12 months to 12 months, 1 year to 1 year. Any filtering you want to apply can be done here on the last tab. For instance, maybe I just want to filter on division and click on the filter button to just do the food service division instead of the entire company. So in this case, then I'm just copying over food service and not the grocery retail division. Once you're done and ready to kick it off, you got to submit the data for a copy processing button up top, and then you'll click on that, and in the same manner, it will then process immediately, and then you'll get an email telling you when it's finished and ready to go. When it's ready to go, then we can go back and run our view. I've got one that I use for sales input, sales plan input. So here is an example where I've and I'm just making necessary selections for my sales plan. And I made the wrong one. It's east. Okay, so this is a little bit different than the data import because I can actually change the number. So now that we imported this into a budget or some sort of category where we use data copy, right, to populate our data. Well, now that becomes instead of a data import, our data is live for updating. So you could actually turn on your planning capabilities and change numbers within the interface. So if I wanted this for a particular Sol2 account for the month of November or the month of December, because we're in September in this particular database. That's our current month. Then I can make necessary changes maybe 2 months out for a given account. Maybe I'm anticipating some additional promo activity where I can say, well, that number should really be instead of 32, it should be more 35-ish. And then I can actually type in my number and what I think that number should be. And that's what we call the planning feature. So you've got a choice to make. You're either going to use Excel and data import and then you make your changes in Excel, or you can use the planning or the data copy features from the history and use a planning enabled measure so that your users could actually go in and change numbers after the fact, after you've imported or copied the data into the application. So those are your options that you have in terms of feeding in your data category, your sales plan or your budget or whatever you want to call it. But then you can either feed it in using data import from Excel or use data copy. It doesn't have to be data copy. You can also load in via traditional methods via the back end. The key here is that you've got two different category types. One is for strictly for user imported data, and then the other is strictly for data that will be fed either traditionally or using data copy. And then the traditional method, that category is a planning enabled category. So that allows me to change the numbers after the fact. And when I make my change and I'm ready to commit my change, so here I've got, maybe I want to commit that 35,000. So I'll go ahead and write that back. So it's actually going to save that away now to the database for my 35,000. And there it is. So I actually wrote that now to the database for Sumter and I can drill the product and I can see how that 35,000 spread out to my different products. And here we can see that 35,000 in my grand total, and we can see how that has been smoothed out to the ratios that already existed at the product level. And then here, if I wanted to make any necessary adjustments at the product level, I can do that. So now it's more of a bottom up update. Maybe I'm doing additional um, promo activity for some of these accounts and some of these products within these accounts. Maybe I anticipate 2,000 units here for this particular product because I'm running a special for this particular product, apples. Right. And then down, maybe I readjust down another number here because I've got a gut feeling or the sales rep told me that, or the store manager told me that they're having supply issues or something along those lines. So you don't know because that's what forecast does, right? You've got sales and operations forecasts where you may have a forecast that starts somewhere, but now you've got to get your input from your sales reps because they have input of data that may not even exist, may be in their head, right? So now you're pinging them for what they think their number should be as well, and they can manage this at the bottom level or at the account level. The planning capabilities really allows you to manage the numbers at the different levels where the sales plan data exists. And then again, I can write that data back and click OK, and then save my work here for down at the product level. Right, so there's my updates to apples. It's now 2,000. And now my new number, instead of 35,000, it's now 35,804. And I can drill back up and pick another account, to work on. And, I can work on another month, and make any necessary changes as well. And this is all copy and paste as well. If it makes sense, you can copy from one cell to another. You can do all kinds of different things there. It just depends on what you want to do. Um, Here, let's copy one here and paste it over here. Yeah, so you can do that type of manipulation. So it makes it any easier. I could change the total as well. So if it's something that in one fell swoop, for instance, maybe for that month, you're anticipating more volume. So I can put in what I think that number should be, and it will smooth that out based on the existing ratios that you have in there. So that's cool too. And I could save that away. Just saving that $420,000 number. Or these are units. So yeah, I mean, really love this part of the product because it's just so flexible. It really allows the user the ability to manage top down, middle out, bottom up, and make the necessary changes to the months, the out, the months out that are going out into the future, so that your forecasts are more accurate. So definitely something that you want to try to do. And this makes it easier. The multi-level planning capability allows you to manage the plan at, in this case, sold to and product. And I can change the number at one level and it will maintain the balances and the ratios at the other levels as well for you. So it's pretty nifty the way it does that. So that is what we wanted to talk about today. So I hope that helped you get an idea about how Stratum can provide a way for you to get your sales plan into Stratum, and then you can certainly start analyzing your forecasts, your budgets, your plans against your actuals. But as you can see, I can use Excel and just import data right into the interface if I wanted to by using the Analyst Hub. So something that you could use to really populate and start getting your sales plans into Stratum.